Hi everyone, my name is Angela, this is Paperbacks Galore, and today I'm going to be recommending character-driven books. All of these books are books where the character work really shines over the plot. All of these have a plot, or at least most of them do, but I feel like the meat of the story and what most readers really love about these books is the characters. All of these books allow you to really get inside the minds of the main characters, and I adore all of these books and I would highly recommend all of them. So let's get into the synopses of these books. First up, we have Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel. This is a reimagining of the Hindu epic, the Ramayana, which I have not read and I was not familiar with before reading this book, but basically Kaikeyi in the epic is kind of a villainous queen, and instead of some of the more high plot, high action elements of the Ramayana being the focus, it's more a coming of age story of Kaikeyi, who is the only daughter of the ruler of this kingdom, and her father actually banishes her mother at the beginning of the story, and so she's left only with a father and her brothers. And after her mother leaves, she's going through these texts that her mother left behind, and Kaikeyi discovers this access to magic that she has within herself. So we see her growing up and becoming a queen in her own right, and she has children, and it's very interesting seeing how she comes into power and uses her magic for good and makes some maybe morally gray decisions, and I just think she's such an interesting character. I really loved all of the dynamics of the royals in this book, and I would highly recommend this one if you like. It's not necessarily a villain origin story because she's not really a villain in this book, but if you like getting in the minds of like powerful women in fantasy books, this one could be for you. Next up, we have Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This is also kind of a retelling. It is based on David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, but instead we have a young man in the 20th century in Appalachia, and he is growing up with a mother who's addicted to drugs. He's growing up in poverty in a place where there aren't really a lot of opportunities for him. He's put into the foster care system. And what makes this book absolutely incredible is the way that Barbara Kingsolver writes this character. He feels like a real man. It feels like there is a man out there named Demon who wrote this memoir in his own particular style of speaking, and you're just reading his memoir, but it's actually a work of fiction. This is one of the two winners of the Pulitzer Prize last year. It's absolutely incredible, and you're basically just following this one man's life up until, I think he's like in his mid-20s when we stop following him, but you really get to know him and understand him deeply, and it's remarkable. Next up is an extremely popular book that if you haven't read and you love character-driven books, please read this book. It's Normal People by Sally Rooney. Some people adore this book, some people loathe this book, some people found it very average. You won't know until you try it. Basically, we have two people in high school, Marianne and Connell, and they're both Irish. This takes place in Ireland, and they kind of have a relationship in high school in which Marianne is kind of a weird loser and Connell is popular, so their relationship is kind of hidden from everyone. And then they meet again when they're in college, and it's very much a kind of anti-romance story where you have two people who clearly have deep feelings about each other, but things are just not easy and simple and happy in the way that they are in romance books. There's a lot about class difference in here. The college setting is really interesting, and it's just how people are bad at being people, and people hate themselves and aren't kind to themselves, and it gets in the way of beautiful relationships, and it's just an incredible book. Definitely, you really get to know these characters, and you might be frustrated with them, you might be obsessed with them, you might be screaming at them to just figure things out or go to therapy, but I loved this. Next up is another fantasy book, and it is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I read this year. I haven't moved on in the series yet, but I plan to very soon. And this is essentially about a young boy named Fitz, who is the bastard son of the king. Since bastards can be really dangerous later in life if they decide to try to get revenge against the family that rejected them, they're trying to keep Fitz close, and he actually ends up being trained as an assassin for the king. Fitz has this kind of magic in his blood that kind of has gone out of circulation. Not a lot of people practice this magic, but with some things going on in the kingdom, it's important that people are able to wield this magic to protect the kingdom, and so there's a really great training sequence in here as well. Very character driven. This is a very slow fantasy book because it is so character driven, and you really are watching Fitz grow up in this book, and the beginning is very slow, but the writing is incredible, and Fitz is such a complex, detailed character, and it's just amazing to read. Next up, we have Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austin. This is one that I read immediately, and this is actually the book that inspired this video idea, because this is such a character-driven literary fiction novel with some dark, emotional, heavy topics, but also some humor as well. Basically, we have our main character, Enid, and she is, well, she's a lot of things. She is very anxious. She has a phobia of bald men. She is gay. She loves true crime, and she tells her mom interesting facts about space every day. Basically, in this book, Enid thinks that a bald man who's her neighbor is following her, and we follow her trying to come to terms with that very scary reality. There's a bit of a romance in here. We watch her relationship with her mother, her relationship with her two half-sisters, and her basically her father's second wife, and dealing with the fact that her father has passed away and has a second family. And you really get to know Enid. She's very unique and quirky, not in an annoyingly quirky kind of way, but she just is so interesting and, again, unique. She's not like any other character you're gonna read on any given day, and it's just a really unique little story. How many times can I say the word unique? It's quirky, it's humorous, but it's also really dark and really relatable and sad, but ultimately hopeful. So if you like lit fic and you want to read something that maybe has a little more of a hopeful tone than like all these super dark lit fic books out there, try this one out. Next up, we have Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. This is a book written by a poet. It takes place partially in the 90s, partially earlier in the 20th century. I think there's some in the early 2000s. We're basically following this Southern Black family, and we're following different perspectives of these women. And in kind of the current timeline at the beginning, these women are fleeing this abusive husband and father, and she's moving back in with her sister and her son in Memphis, Tennessee. And this book is just beautifully written, and it really is just all about the characters and their relationships and how they met each other, and the family dynamics, the romance, the horrific part. There's so much about community in this book. It really is so sad but touching, and the characters really shine in this book. I don't remember their names, unfortunately. There were a lot of them, but like while you're reading them, they really do feel like real people. I would highly recommend this one. Next up is a book that probably has the most plot out of any of these. Well, okay, maybe besides the fantasy books, but it's If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is essentially a story about a group of 7 friends at this elite Shakespeare acting school. I don't know what it's called, a conservatory. Basically, they're at this artsy kind of school. They're all studying Shakespeare. They're all actors, competing for parts in all of these plays. There's a lot of romantic dynamics and jealousy and tension and love, and there's essentially something really tragic that happens, and these characters have to deal with the fallout of that, and it is just such an incredible story, and you really do get into the minds of these characters, but essentially this friend group, and all of them have such distinct personalities, and it's so interesting to watch the dynamics of this friend group. So although it does kind of have a mystery thriller kind of plot, I think the characters really shine, and I wouldn't say it's very fast paced at all, and I think if you don't connect to the characters, you're not going to care as much about the mystery thriller plot line, whereas I think with most mystery books, you're kind of there for the plot. So highly recommend this one. Those are all of my character-driven book recommendations. Let me know if you've read any of these or if you have any character-driven books that you love. I hope you have a lovely week, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye!